And we're live. Welcome to LOOPcast. We are joined today as we continue the Papa Pogo paternity tour by the inimitable Jeremy Tate, and I'll introduce him more at length in a minute. Yes, Pogo has instructed me to tell everyone in the chat that his wife gave birth to a very healthy baby girl, and they're all very happy, and thank you for all the prayers. He's very moved by the messages he's received. So congrats again to Pogo and all the little Pogos. And welcome. Here we are. We have so much to talk about today because it turns out Europe isn't doing so well. JD Vance might have hurt some feelings. He might have caused some tears over the weekend with his harsh words for the state of free speech in our good friends over the pond. Jeremy, you are over the pond today, joining us from the great city of London, right?
Yes. Hopefully, nothing we say in this conversation gets arrested by the British police here, but we'll try to keep it.
I told Jeremy before we went live our goal was to get him arrested today, and more on that later. But Jeremy, tell the viewers a little bit about yourself, what it is you do here for education in our great country, and what you're doing in London.
Yeah, absolutely. Eric and Josh, thrilled to be back. Big fan of the Loop. It's an honor to be here with you. So I run an alternative to the SAT and ACT. It's called the Classic Learning Test. So we work closely with, I believe, some of the best Catholic colleges in the country, places like Ave Maria, of course, University of Dallas, Christian College. Students can take that as an alternative to the SAT and ACT, but really something we started out of a conviction that the College Board it has a toxic influence on American education. The college entrance exam has unique power in kind of shaping and driving in some ways what's taught at the secondary level. And so our thought is that if on the most important test, kids are reading, Dante, Shakespeare, Flannery O'Connor in the modern world, instead of literally Bernie Sanders, Erica and Josh.
No, don't tell me that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. On the SAT. I mean, they're fully committed to their ideology. So that's the dream, and really grateful for the enthusiasm and support from the folks here.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're going to get into some of that ideology for sure later on in the program. We had some massive news drop over the weekend about the Department of Education as well. But first, this episode of Loopcast is brought to you by our good friends over at Holy Heroes. Meet Father Leopold. Father Leopold celebrates Mass. This is a custom brick set for your children, and we have a very limited supply up here, so get him right away. Fun fact, who is the shortest priest of all time? Hint, he's 1.5 inches tall. It's Father Leopold, because he is a brick set mini figurine. The Mass set is a 176-piece brick set from Holy Heroes with everything needed to celebrate Mass for all your child's brick set creations. This is great. I have a young son who is obsessed with Legos. My 8-year-old, she's discovered them. This seems so perfect for the Catholic home. There's even a little mini brick relic to put into the altar. Vestments for all liturgical seasons, right? Tabernacle, sanctuary lamp, and more. One mom said, and it wasn't me, but I could have said this, all of our other mini figurines have Mass every morning. Thanks, Holy Heroes. They have just restocked after Christmas, so you need to order right now. This is going to go really fast. He always sells out. These hand-packed sets include custom bricks, which take months to produce. So don't wait. It's the best gift ever for all of those first communions, confirmations, for Easter, birthday, even for your priests. You got some Gen Z priests coming up through the ranks here. They probably love a brick set. It's just all around catechetical fun. So check them out, holyheroes.com/brick. Don't wait. Again, very limited supply. They just want to be very clear about that. So don't blame me if you wait till the episode's over to order yours and it's gone. So
think about it. There's a lot of Loopcast listeners, so don't wait on this.
That's right. You're in competition. All right. So we're going to throw that link in the chat for everybody to go and find their Father Leopold Celebrates Mass gift set. I'm not laughing because I'm denigrating it. It's because I am so excited about it. I can't stop laughing. So, all right, guys. Things are not looking good. On Friday, we covered J.D. Vance's speech to the Munich Security Council meeting, and it was fantastic. And just to recap for the listeners, with J.D. Vance, he got up, and the conference was primarily supposed to be about Ukraine, Russia, and ending that conflict and addressing external security concerns in Europe. What he got up and said was, yeah, we have all these external concerns, but my primary concern for Europe right now does not come from without, but from within. And he went on to detail cases of threats against democratic principles that he said we share in the United States with Europe, but you all are threatening free speech. Well, there were some reactions to him that came out over the weekend. We'll turn first to the reaction here in the United States. The mainstream media, most pointedly our friends over at CBS, they decided to take the opportunity to do a little apologetics for Germany's free speech, war on free speech, so their laws. Let's start with clip 1 there, Rosie. Can we ramp that up? This is on 60 Minutes last night. We'll see if it can load. Rosie's in a challenging spot. We might just have to summarize. And Josh, I'm going to shoot it over to you. Yeah, it looks like we're not loading. So, Josh, you watched
surveillance that Germany conducted 80 years ago. How do you respond to that?
There is no surveillance.
Josephine Ballon is a CEO of Tate, a Berlin-based human rights organization that supports victims of online violence.
In the United States, a lot of people look at this and say this is restricting free speech. It's a threat to democracy.
Free speech needs boundaries. And in the case of Germany, these boundaries are part of our constitution. Without boundaries, a very small people can rely on endless
kind of laggy
freedom to say anything that they want, while everyone else is scared and intimidated.
Your fear.
Yeah, I mean, again, the first question should come out of anybody's mouth on that one is like, so what exactly is online violence and how does one perform that? That's what I really love to know. I mean, like there used to be a commercial back in the late 80s, fax me a beer. It was a joke because you, of course, cannot transmit alcohol, cans of beer over like phone lines. How do you commit acts of violence online? I'd love to know that. Like, can you say very hurtful, mean things? Can you do libel? Sure. Can you accuse someone of a falsehood? Yeah, but like what exactly is online violence? So absolutely a disastrous performance by 60 Minutes. The other thing I wanted to cue up was in the immediate aftermath of J.D. Vance's speech, the German defense minister got up there and said about J.D. Vance's speech, this is not acceptable.
Right.
So what's ironic about that, of course, is that J.D. Vance said Europe does not accept free speech. And then Europe says, this speech was not acceptable.
You're not allowed to say that.
Like,
the irony.
Literally proving the point, guys. Way to go.
That's right. Yeah, I think just to back it up and set the stage a little more, and then Jeremy, I'm going to ask for your reaction. So, Mark, CBS, the 60 Minutes, they do the interview first with the German prosecutor who you heard there, and she's talking about how free speech needs limitations. And that's all we are doing. We just have limitations on our free speech. And 60 Minutes actually sent a camera crew in to follow the German police on a raid into a home where there had been someone posting online some quote, and we never actually see what the post was. They don't actually ever give us any concrete definitions of what constitutes these crimes until we get to the 3-person panel. Then we get a little narrower definition, and it gets a little more chilling, right? So I don't know if we're going to be able to play this one, but basically she asks them point blank. There's the 3, you can see them on the screen, the 3 prosecutors. Is it a crime to insult someone? Is posting an insult a crime? And they all nod, yes, yes, and they're very German accents. And she says, well, is it a crime to repost a lie? And they all nod, yes, yes, yes. Now, again, the immediate follow-up question should have been, how do you define an insult? They don't do that. There's no hard-hitting follow-up question. And so Jeremy, I'm going to pitch it to you because I think there is an argument that can be made. We're looking at the Hamas protests on our own campuses last year, anti-Semitic speech, and we talked about, the universities probably should have clamped down a little bit. So when you hear there should be limitations on free speech, what do you think the issue is with the way the Germans are going about doing it?
Yeah, this speech was absolutely electric. I played it for my kiddos to listen to as well. I mean, the boldness of Vance, he had to know what the audience was thinking. He didn't mince words, and he actually tried to be gracious, right? He said, I wish this wasn't just an isolated event, that happened once or twice. Then he went through country after country where we have seen this absolute overreach, really kind of a police state, where people are afraid to even post things on social media because of the police, coming and knocking on their door, as may happen at the end of this podcast if we do that.
Yeah, I mean, we went through a few the crime to insult someone, and I was trying to do research on this because I wanted to get some facts and some actual cases and really all I can find in German media are examples of, extreme far right groups coming and saying things like the Holocaust never happened, and it is a crime in Germany to state that. So that would be one example of one of these lies. And then if you repost it or like it on social media, you could be fined for that because that is an example of they call it a lie. Kamala Harris probably would have called it misinformation or disinformation over here. But I was going in, so their hate crimes definition, and they put this online speech censorship under the category of hate crime. Hate crimes comprise politically motivated crimes when there are indications that the offense is committed because the perpetrator, the person who posts online, is motivated by prejudice against, here comes the list, nationality, ethnic origin, skin color, religion, worldview, social status, physical and or mental disability, impairment, and gender, sexual identity, sexual orientation, or physical appearance. Your post might be directed straight at one person, a group of persons, or an institution, or an object which you attribute to one of the groups that you're posting hate speech about. So this is a real sweeping definition. And in fact, I found a case where it was weaponized last year against a woman named, where is it? Pull it up. Marie-Therese Kaiser. She was charged and fined 6,000 euros for posting a bar graph on immigration statistics and crime rates. So this is one of the sort of prime examples of how this is used, how this law is used in Germany, not just to counteract lies or slander or libel that we would call here in the United States, but actually to censor information that the government doesn't want out there.
Right. And of course, there's so many things to unpack here, but what they're getting at here is hate itself is what is illegal, the speech or whatever. But she posts just a graph. It's a factual argument. Now, she might be laying out two facts, like here's the number of immigrants, here's the number of crimes they committed. She's not saying something like these are evil people and using racist words. She's literally just putting facts out is enough to say, well, you're ginning up hate, and therefore it's hate speech, and therefore, but it's a crime. It's like, these are crime statistics. By what measure am I committing a crime? By sharing the information. And that's why this speech that J.D. Vance gave was so important, right in the heart of it, right in the beast of Europe, in Munich, in Germany, where they're trying to say, hey, listen, we have all this stuff going on with the internet where people have free speech, which is apparently for them so terrible. And they need to say, but this category of speech, which is based in hate and misinformation, surely you can't say evil things, hateful things, and you can't say lies. Well, who determines the lies, by the way? Is it the state, the same state that's made all these mistakes on COVID, on the war in Iraq and everything else? Like, we're going to really trust them to be the arbiters of truth? So again, and what's nice about it from their perspective is like, well, it's Germany. You can at least understand that here in Germany, we have this tradition of saying no to hate speech because of what it led to in Nazi Germany. And we had all these problems. So you still can't deny the Holocaust, as you said. You can't say certain things about Nazis and stuff. The swastika is illegal. Therefore, this is their point. The elites want to say, surely you can at least recognize this, that we can't have absolute free speech that, is so reckless and dangerous, because look what it did to Germany. And that's exactly the point that Margaret Brennan made. My goodness, this woman, she is 0 for February. She gets up there and on Meet the whatever her show is, Face the Nation, and she interviews Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and she's pointing to how flawed and wrong and awful JD Vance is for making this speech, and of all places, he makes a speech in Germany, and her point was, this is a country. She goes, you're standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to commit a genocide. It's like, it'd be one thing if you'd say, well, free speech is such a problem because, Nazis and stuff like that. But then again, did we have, even on the merits of the case, like, what is your allegation here? Free speech in Weimar Germany led to Nazi occupation? Really? Is that your call? That's how Nazis got to power, is free speech? That Adolf Hitler was a free speech absolutist? Really? Because I kind of feel like he was known for killing Jews, not really for free speech. I don't know. You call me crazy. And in fact, I got to give credit. I don't know. Did you guys see this clip put out by Fire over the weekend? We're responding to it. And Nadine Strawson, I'm not really a fan. she used to be the head of the ACLU. I think on 99% of the issues, we probably come on different sides of the track. But on this one, she was awesome, because she just spells out in clear details, like, no. This is absolutely a fallacy that a bunch of free speech in the 1920s led to the rise of Nazi Germany. No, in fact, Nazis were suppressed. Their newspapers were suppressed. They were put in jail for saying things about Jews. All this stuff, it's an absolute falsehood. And her point was, what in fact happens? It's the forbidden fruit. When views that are expressed are illegal, if you say them, you get put in jail. It actually fuels them, because they can say, see, the Jews are out to get us. It's absolutely toxic. No, what you need, the best disinfectant, is sunlight.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeremy, do you have thoughts on disinfectant sunlight?
I think there'd be a lot of reporters in 1930s Germany to hear that Hitler was a free speech absolutist, and right. People disappeared. Journalists just disappeared, for writing, and so free speech could have saved, millions and millions of Jews and others who are victims of the Holocaust.
Yeah, if there was so much free speech, how come we didn't even know about what was going on there until it was years into it? It's shocking to me that this is the line, not shocking. It's like the shocking but not surprising, right? It's shocking to hear it when it finally is spoken, but this is the line that the mainstream media is choosing to take here to attack JD Vance. And I think that, we saw this a lot over the censorship debate during the campaigns. And I wanted to get both of your thoughts on just where we are in a cultural moment when the country being so divided. Yes, Trump won the popular vote, but we still got half. I know I'm really talking, guys. Yeah. Go ahead.
I guess my point is, it's not just to attack JD Vance. The whole point is that they're creating this whole narrative, this whole artifice of like why speech, if it's free, is dangerous, because people will spread out lies and they'll spread hate. And it's like, well, yes. Are there people who will tell lies in the world? Yeah. Are there people full of hate in the world? Yeah. What? Free people will do, crazy things, of course. But their whole point is to say, no, it's reckless and it's dangerous, and we need the government to come in to make sure we regulate it. And a lot of Americans who have been imbibed with the spirit of free speech for 200 years, it's so essential to our being that we don't even blink at this. But listen, people. Jeremy's in London now. There are people, when you pray out loud outside an abortion clinic facility, they arrest you. Now, if you stand outside an abortion facility and don't pray out loud and you just have your rosary in your hand, they'll arrest you. If you don't have a rosary, you just stand there quietly, don't move your lips, they will arrest you. Because again, it's harassment. They come up with all these arguments like, well, I don't like your speech, and therefore I'm a victim of online violence or harassment or whatever. And what they're trying to do is suppress voices, and we need to push back against this. Most Americans look at what happens in China, where they have a social credit score, and if you speak out of line, your score goes down, then you can't ride the bus anymore. And it sounds crazy, like this is like an alternative world almost. It's so far from our experience. But then again, in this country, people would lose their jobs for exercising their free speech. And so the elites in this country and in Europe, they look at China and they don't get horrified.
Mhm.
They get jealous. And
Right.
we
Yeah.
need to realize that.
Yeah, and you almost can't exaggerate enough how quick folks are to get in line when this kind of thing starts. If you've got a few kids and your neighbor got arrested for posting something, for praying silently, it impacts millions in
It's
terms of
chilling.
changing their behavior, and then it makes it to where anybody who does step out of line, it's that much more obvious. I mean, so it really does. I mean, this is the true side of authoritarianism that they're not seeing.
Yeah, I think I was looking up Thomas Jefferson because I wanted to go back to the beginning there, the original father, and he makes that connection between freedom of speech and freedom of conscience, that freedom of conscience is an inalienable right that we have from God. It precedes the state. But freedom of speech within the state is what enables us to exercise that inalienable right of conscience. And like you said, Jeremy, I think that the chilling social effect of measures like this, it's hard. We are such social creatures, right? That when we see one person taken down just for saying the wrong thing, we do get in line so quickly. Freedom of speech, the First Amendment is what keeps the ruling class, our representatives, accountable to the people. It's the precondition for self-government, and they hate that. J.D. Vance said in his speech, he said, he quoting John Paul II, right? It was a great moment. He quotes John Paul II, "Be not afraid," and he tells all the ruling elites of Europe assembled before him, "Do not be afraid of your people," right? We don't have to be afraid of what our people think. We need to allow them to self-govern, but they don't want that. They hate that. And I think too, I've interviewed many people at this point who came from socialist behind the Iron Curtain or from socialist Cuba, and they said that what scared them most about the last 20 years of American governance was the shutdown of free speech, either because of the pandemic or because of LGBTQ plus ideology. And to them, it was a very short step from freedom, the democracy that America's for. And yeah, I know I'm not on the default setting. Sorry about the mic, guys. We're working it. I'll shut up after this. But it's a very short step from the freedoms that we enjoy now back to what they experienced in Romania, in Hungary, in Cambodia, in Cuba. So
Well,
this
I
is
mean,
an
I
important
think what
issue.
Jeremy said was so telling though, and so true, because we are social animals, and there is that aspect of like social herding where, like, if 95% of people are doing something, you just feel like, oh gosh, that must be the thing. They must be right and I must be wrong, because and so that we saw that during COVID, where like there was just this herding effect. Like, you got to take the shot, you got to take the shot, you got to take the shot. And if anyone who would push back against that narrative was ostracized, they lost their job, they were, basically a pariah. You're a grandma killer. And so we really do need to, guard against that aspect of humanity where there is that herding effect. And you got to make sure, like on debates on free speech, that we don't fall into these same traps, because we don't want to get to where Europe is, where you really do lose out on your ability to speak out. And there's other ways to do it. It's not just the speech laws and the hate, so-called anti-hate speech laws. There's other ways, not just speech, but on freedom of assembly. So you can have debanking, which is where banks, in certain states especially, but banks will choose to not do business with you. Like, oh, good, well, we don't want to do business with anyone who sells guns. And then, then you really are breaking down society, because like, what sense do you have freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom to congregate and share ideas if, like, literally you have no ability to do commerce? So these are really intertwined, and we need to reaffirm the basic rights that we have in the Bill of Rights. You try to take out one in isolation, and others start to fall.
Yeah, just like church teaching, but I digress. Anyway.
And one more thought here
ahead,
is that we heard the elites and their uproar after Vance, but there were so many of the regular folks all across Europe who were absolutely cheering. I got one buddy, and after the speech, he said, "I'm outraged at Vance's speech. I'm outraged that it took an American to come here and say what none of our leaders are willing to say."
Amen to that.
Amen. That's good to hear. Yeah.
Somebody in England's probably like, can we just borrow JD Vance for a couple of years?
Sorry.
No.
America, could you colonize us for a couple of years?
Might be open to that.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, turning to the fight here in the United States a little bit. And Jeremy, I'm excited to have you on for this segment. Did I fix my mic?
It is. It's
Yes.
perfectly clear now. Yeah.
I love it.
Just if anyone was wondering what I did, I unplugged it and plugged it back in. The first rule of tech bro fix. I did it. All right. So we're back, guys. That means we can talk education. The DOGE boys moved into the education department over the weekend and continued to uncover a lot. But they actually had a lot of their work done for them this time from Chris Rufo, who has made a name for himself, activist journalist. Let's just get stuff done. And he has a lot of controversial takes on him. He uses the left's weapons against them, but to great effect. And we have here, there we go. He shared on Twitter, now known as X, over Friday, over the course of the day, about every 40 minutes, a new thing would drop. Look what I discovered that the Department of Education has been spending your tax dollars on. And it's basically a portrait in how our ruling elites were making our children into good collectivist progressives. We've got the whiteness pie chart, teaching kids about the white supremacy, about their unconscious biases. In exclusive footage that he shared with Ben Shapiro on Ben's show Friday, he played a video in which Equity Assistance Center experts led children in sessions that would destigmatize youth sex work and explain to them how youth sex work was an important element of the LGBTQ plus community. This was an Equity Assistance Center that received $8 million in taxpayer funds to go into different school districts and train teachers to destigmatize sex work among children. And we also had teachers on there. I was watching these videos.
It's just amazing. It's
incredible. I mean, it's so much outrage and it's so unbelievable that you almost start to
one of the things that we experienced during the campaign is that there were some things that were being funded that were so radical, you would tell people and they would think, oh, well, you're making it up.
Right.
And you really run it what? Some things are bizarre. So this transgender comic book in Peru, we paid $8 million for it. And people go, that's so stupid, I can believe it.
You made that up. Right. Oh, yeah.
No, but I mean, if you're a specific one, actually, they spent $8 million to out of concern for LGBTQ plus to train teachers to make sure that they let them know that children who are prostitutes, because it's important for LGBTQ for some reason.
Yeah,
what does that tell you? That's okay and we shouldn't stigmatize it. It sounds like you should call 911. What the hell are you talking about? It's just but it's so evil and it's so bizarre. People are you're trying to convince me that taxpayers are paying teachers to train them nah, it doesn't seem true. And then you run into that struggle. People you're making it up.
Yeah. The beautiful thing about what Chris Rufo was doing on Friday is, and this is the difference between winning elections and losing elections, is that as he posted these videos, DOGE was pretty much just watching his account. He would post a video, and within hours, that Equity Assistance Center with the sex work video, they were defunded. they just pulled the plug. And then we had the teachers who had a workshop on how the American education system is basically a concentration camp, and how that it's run by Nazis and white supremacists. Within hours, that particular center lost all of its funding. So it was an interplay. It was very interesting to watch it go down. And again, the list goes on and on. I wanted to just put the U.S. Department of Education into a little bit of perspective for everyone before we get into, is it good to should we just blow it up? Should we get rid of it entirely? Is there a more easy way to do this? So their budget for fiscal year 2023 was almost $80 billion in discretionary funding. About $19 billion of that went to pandemic learning loss. Interesting enough. Another $19 billion, probably $18.4 billion went to Title I grants, which is for low-income schools serving low-income students. Special education, $15 billion. And then we have Pell Grants, mental health services. And also it says the budget also prioritized equity, learning, recovery, and workforce development initiatives. So I think that's where the radical videos that Chris Rufo's uncovering would go into. So people, of course, are losing it. So Randy Weingarten gets on, and Rosie, can we just try and play this clip with Randy? Because I want to give, fair voice to the other side of the aisle. Roll it. Oh, and Randy Weingarten is the head of the Teachers Union, the national organization, for anyone who's not aware.
It's the American Federation of Teachers, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, and she really hates bureaucracy.
So
Rosie, are we going to be able to do that one? There we go.
No,
we're not. Okay. Well,
Internet issues
go
today.
On there. I'll quote it for you because I watched it twice so that you don't have to. Randy says, I really am not a fan of bureaucracy. Nobody likes bureaucracy. And this is just another example of bureaucrats, unelected bureaucrats, coming in and taking food out of the mouths of school children. And she goes on, and it's punishing teachers, and they're going to defund all of this really important work that we do. I was curious. I don't know if you guys have looked into your own state funding breakdown. Connecticut, it looks like my school is 56.5%, my local high school, 56.5% local. That's me paying for my local school, 35% state funding, and only 8% comes from federal funding. So we're not exactly stealing a lot out of the kids' mouths.
The federal funding formula is going to be pretty much universal. The state, each individual state will have a different breakdown of the local and state funding, but the federal funding one is pretty close. I mean, there'll be variations here or there, but you're not going to find a state that's like 60% federal funding or whatever. And so I just think from a rhetorical standpoint, it might be easier if Trump just said, I'm not going to abolish the entire Department of Education, but all it's going to be for is student loans for college, and that's it. And everything else, the low K-12 stuff, states and local governments, you guys can do a much better job than the bureaucrats here in DC. And if he did that, I think the American people would agree with him.
Yeah. Jeremy, where do you think the resistance is, when we talk about defunding or getting rid of the Department of Education, and we see these kinds of stories coming out of it? There's still, I had conversations with relatives over the weekend, and they're just like, they're against education. We need free education. Where is that coming from? What would you say? Someone in the space is.
Yeah, I think at first it sounds crazy, right? It sounds. And I remember the first time I heard this, it sounds wild. To get rid of the Department of Ed, abolish it, like what, and then you start to unpack it a little bit and get into the history of the Department of Ed and this understanding that actually American education has done nothing but decline since we have had this, and it's create this level of bureaucracy that violates a Catholic understanding of subsidiarity and decisions being made on a really local level, right? And now that we've seen that it's actually way worse than anybody imagined with everything that Chris Rufo is uncovering. So I think it'll take a lot of discipline. I've talked to a lot of folks who are kind of in the know, and even with those folks, there's not a consensus for what's going to happen. More and more people are saying that 2026, big year for America, 250th anniversary, and that something could be done for a federal level to try to infuse some level of patriotism for America's founding, and that maybe after 2026 it will be closed. It's very hard. It's easy when you're running and you don't have the power. Say we're going to shut it down, but as soon as you win the election and you can use it for good, but what's going to happen in 8 or 10 or 12 years, if we get a Democrat back in office. So I think it needs to be shut down, but I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think the point that you were touching on there is what do you replace it with? How do we build back better? Because there's so much outrage coming out of the DOGE revelations on all levels. Education, I think, because it involves our children, being a super emotional, a particularly emotional outrage that at least I feel, and anger. And the question being, how do we get back to basics in education? And I know, Jeremy, you've been involved in a lot of the classical education movement as a result of your work with the CLT and your own teaching. And where do you see sort of the best turnaround hope for our schools in the country right now?
I mean, classical charter schools, I don't know of one classical charter school that doesn't have a wait list that's bigger than the entire enrollment of the student body. And I think what that communicates is just the demand for this. I mean, so many parents, when they get a sense of traditional education or classical education, I think most parents, left, right, center, this is what they want for their kids. They want their kids to grow and wonder, to hear great stories, to come back more honest, informed in virtue. Like, people want this, and it's been the teachers unions that has made it really, really hard. I think that the question with school choice, I mean, I'm overall for school choice, but where we've had it and where we've seen it in Canada and in Europe, we have seen the way that the strings and the government control, that has followed the money and those. So I think we've got to be really diligent, but there are thousands and thousands. I was just in Florida this past weekend and at Trinitas, a Christian school, and met students and families that were at a Christian school, and there's no way they could have been there. And they're receiving an incredible education. They're there because school choice passed in Florida. And so I think if we can stay vigilant and make sure that the kind of strings don't come, I think it's going to be a great blessing. I think that's really the hope, right now.
And that vigilance has been a lot of organizations that are fighting for religious liberty, because we have a court right now that's very pro-religious liberty and allowing these schools to not have those strings attached. But you're right, we have to stay vigilant. But I think it's definitely worth it. That's why I've been trying to promote school choice in Texas. They got a big fight in their hands, and the concerns of some people are like, well, won't it come with strings? Like right now, we have the most friendly court we've had on religious freedom for religious institutions in well over 100 years. This is the time to strike and to try to break up this monolith of the public school monopoly and give these moms and dads a chance to have their kids get a better education like they've experienced, as you said, in Florida, other states like Indiana. Now we're seeing it in Iowa and all across the country. So many states. I wish we had it here in Michigan. I wish we had school choice.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
And I'm of the conviction, I think conservatives were asleep at the wheel for much of the 20th century. Radical progressives understood this in the 1920s. That if you control this one thing, education, you're going to shape everything else, from people's views of human life, the dignity of life, abortion, and so it will be the fight is going to be intense. And I think to be able to because look, a student goes to a Catholic school and otherwise they'd be in the public school system, they're probably going to vote different. They're going to have different views about some of the most
100%.
crucial issues facing the modern world.
Well, it's like what you said about for a while there, you as well opposed getting rid of the Department of Education. Like, well, why would we be against education? And then you've come to realize, whoa, wait a minute, a whole nother ballgame. There's a guy, I can't take credit for this myself. He said, if we actually decided to extend education to much, much earlier, so after you give birth to a child, within a few weeks, you would give that baby over, and that they would go to quote, baby school for a while, then we would assume that, well, if you get rid of baby school, how will anyone be able to walk? That's the only way. The generation, people we have to have this government school. So otherwise, babies would never learn how to walk. I mean, like,
Which actually reminds me, another video that this is terrible. Another video that Chris Rufo uncovered and I watched on his appearance on Ben Shapiro was the racist baby training. So they actually think this because they were teaching the teachers to believe that the students in their classroom by 2 or 3 months old, babies, especially white babies, have learned to prefer faces that are the same skin color as themselves, which is strange because the science suggests that they don't actually have a conscious sense of self apart from their mother. But anyway, it's not rational. But
why is that racist though? I mean, like, it's so weird.
it's
I mean,
so
like,
weird. It's just
here's what you've been used to as your loving mom and dad for years, or for months and months, and here's this image that's the same similar color scheme.
That's racist, Josh.
Any kid, black, white,
Yep.
red, yellow.
We need to get those babies into their indoctrination camp because
give me a break.
Yeah, it was like Ibram X. Kendi, racist baby. Did you ever see that board book? It was in my local library, so I got to see it. That's great. Anyway, these people, it is, and I think you're right, Jeremy. It is going to be a real battle here, and you can see the lines being drawn and the sort of the strategy being reworked on the left when it comes to this. And the attack is very much going to be personal. Like, you hate education, you're a bunch of white bigots, and yeah, it's you don't want children to have.
Now we did promise we'd let Jeremy go here because he had to head off to his conference.
Thank
what
you.
is this conference that you're going to? Tell us a little bit about it before you have to leave. If you can.
It's ARC. It's the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. So it's I believe it's Jordan Peterson's brainchild. So he's one of the main speakers here, and Niall Ferguson, and really trying to address these problems that are plaguing the entire West right now. And so it's about 9 different issues, from taxation to education to various issues with the economy and war and international policy. So there was a Loop number I wanted to use for my Twilight this morning. I do read my Loop email in the morning, and this Gallup poll that I believe the Loop quoted saying that 50% of Democrats wish the party would moderate. Yeah. And I think that is, and I was thinking about, if Trump is popular, I think JD Vance is a lot more popular, maybe even, especially in a lot of Catholic circles right now. And we're the ones having the big families. I can't, the number of Catholic families I can think of that have a ton of kids, they're going to be voting age in 2028, and so I'm optimistic that this renaissance we're seeing in education with large families, that it's going to force some degree of moderation, and that we can maintain some of these wins that we're getting right now.
I hope so too.
Josh, Erica, love what y'all are doing. Love the Loop. Thanks so much for having me on as a guest. Great to see you all.
Yeah,
thank you so much
for joining. Have a great time.
Thank you.
All right, we're sending Jeremy off to save the West with Jordan Peterson, and he failed to mention that he is also one of the speakers. So congratulations to Jeremy and the classic learning test.
I did find that polling to be interesting, but I mean, it's already it's going to increase, as he says, as more and more of these young people get to be voting age. But already that 18 to 30 set is much more conservative than people had expected, and I think that's part of the reason why. And it's not, and one of the reasons is, the future belongs to the fertile, yes, but it's also because that generation has experienced, the COVID lockdowns, the government censorship, the idea that pornography is love. And they're like, we're rejecting a lot of this stuff that the elites are pushing on them, and God bless them. I love I have great hope in the future of the young people.
Yeah, 100%.
Turn this stuff around.
There was a really fascinating New York Times piece this weekend too, that it's sort of this another sort of lightning indicator that something massive is shifting. So Rosie, if you could just pull up that headline. This was the New York Times weekend. Botched care and tired staff, Planned Parenthood in crisis. And I saw the headline and I thought this must be the New York Post. I click it, it's the New York Times, and they're actually reporting on this investigative report into interviewing 50 current and former Planned Parenthood executives, consultants, medical staff. Clinics are short on cash and care, quote unquote, has suffered. The whole piece was pretty astonishing because I think if you told me 3 years ago I was going to see a deep dive investigative report from the Gray Lady into Planned Parenthood that was critical, I would have laughed. I would have been like, that will never happen in my lifetime. But here it goes. not only that, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Josh. In the first 2 paragraphs, they tell this terrible story about a woman who was given chemical abortion drugs. She sent home, and she's told that it's fine. She's still cramping. She's having a terrible time. She goes to the emergency room and discovers that the baby is still in her womb. In the course of this story, the New York Times refers to the unborn child who is dying as the baby. And to me,
How did that get past the editors?
How did that get past them? Josh, what is going on?
Well, I think this is a surprise because, for the last 15, 20 years or whatever, with regards to anything on abortion, the New York Times' policy has been, we can't show any signs of any flaws or any weakness or anything that needs to be changed or corrected, because that might open the door for pro-lifers like Josh Mercer to come in and say, see, we told you. Okay. But I do think, if I had to guess, like, part of what they're getting at with this article is that everyone knows Planned Parenthood gets a ton of money from governments and it gets a ton of money from donors. But like, a lot of that money from the donors goes right into political campaigns and to help elect Democratic candidates. And that money isn't going actually to the care of the patients. And so the New York Times this is their kind of, soft elbow to say, hey, listen, you actually have to take care of these patients, because if you don't, they're all going to be people who grouse about the industry, and the pro-lifers will use their evidence and witness against legal abortion. So I think that's their warning shot. Like, they're basically saying, straighten up, get things ready so that we can continue on with legal abortion without any criticism. So they're kind of trying to let people know, this is the Gray Lady. This is the official thing. It's not just like an isolated news article from the AP somewhere and wherever. Right. This is, the high priest, New York Times, saying, you got to straighten up your act, because we're worried that all this stuff could be used against us. And, shock of shock, might actually be used against the legal abortion. That's
the fact that they're saying it out loud. Yeah. I got a message from our good friend, Mary Fiorito. She said, I sent this article to Dr. Tony Levatino, who's a convert, who was an abortion doctor. He performed second trimester abortions prior to his conversion. And he wrote back to her. He said, Mary, if this is what they're saying publicly, imagine how bad it must be in reality. So he's saying, behind the curtain, it's much worse than the New York Times is even admitting here publicly. But I think, Josh, that's a good, the 4D chess of politics that you're clued into. Very true.
Well, and I just think that, we're talking about 90% of healthcare, you think of the doctors and the nurses who care so much for their patients. Mm-hmm. But this is an industry that is brutally based on exploitation, coercion, moms who don't actually want to abort their child. Now, some of them do, sadly, obviously, but a lot of them also don't want to. And, they get, these so-called doctors fly in and they line these women up like an assembly line, boom, 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 get them done rapid fashion. And there's little care at all, sensitivity or care for the patient. Like, I'm not even addressing, obviously, the biggest problem, which is it involves murder. I get that. But I'm just like, even if you didn't focus on that, it's the dehumanizing, assembly line way that they do this. It's a disgusting industry.
I still wonder how that calling the child a baby got past the editors. I don't know. It was mind-blowing.
Print that one out, save it.
I know. I should just frame that up on the wall. I do have a screenshot. I'm like, oh my gosh. All right. So turning to a little more levity, it is President's Day.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
We're celebrating. The car dealerships, the people who sell sofas call it President's Day, but our federal government still calls it George Washington's birthday.
It is the law that it is George Washington's birthday. So in a nod to the car dealerships, though, Mercer, I did come up with I have a few President's Day trivia questions for you.
Presidential trivia to honor our first president. Okay.
That is right. It's going to include multiple presidents, but to honor our first president. All right. So I'm going to begin with a softball. First question. And if you know it in the chat, please put the answers in the chat. So 3 of our presidents have died have gone to meet with God the Father on the 4th of July. I mean, how poetic and appropriate. Mercer, can you name all 3 presidents who have died on the 4th of July?
Well, the easy ones are John Adams and Thomas Jefferson because they literally died on the exact same July 4th,
It's amazing.
1826, on the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And I'm trying to remember the third one that would have died. I think it was like Zachary Taylor or something like that. Someone like
Hint, it was the 5th. Who's the 5th president? Oh, he's got to write it down.
Monroe.
Yes, James Monroe.
I just got to use my fingers. I didn't write it down.
There you go. All right. So we had 3 die. It was Monroe, Adams, Jefferson. Okay, question. This one's a little international. Which U.S. president spoke English as a second language? And
Martin
I
Van
can give
Buren.
you. Hey, and what was his first language?
Dutch.
Yes, love it. I can't get past this guy. All right. Who was the first president born after the United States declared independence?
Okay, so he was born born in the United States after the Declaration of Independence.
After
so
1776.
He was not. Yeah, he was born in the United States.
You're correct.
I want to think it was. It might have been. Might have actually been Andrew Jackson.
Oh, you're close.
No, he was no. Because I remember he got in a fight with the
All right.
British soldier.
All right, I'm going to call you time on this one. It was also Martin Van Buren.
Also Van Buren. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, 1782. 1782. All right, let's try another one. Which president held a patent? And bonus points if you can tell me what it was for. Who held a patent for something he invented?
Jimmy Carter? I don't know.
Oh, no. Abraham Lincoln. It was Abraham Lincoln. He invented this. I looked it up. He has a device to lift boats over the shoals and obstacles in a river. It must have been the Ohio River or something like that. But I thought that was kind of cool. So Abraham Lincoln, man of all trades. You'll get this one. Who was the only president to serve as both president and Chief Justice of the Supreme Court?
Taft.
That would be Taft.
He actually served in all 3 branches. He was a member of Congress, too, at one point.
Oh, I love it. All right, and last one, the 4 presidents on Mount Rushmore. And who will be the 5th?
Well, obviously, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. You have Theodore Roosevelt and Abraham Lincoln as well.
There you go. Any predictions, Oracle? Will there ever be another head added to Rushmore?
Oh, no, I doubt it. But
yeah, probably not.
I do wonder, like, there should be a city. Is there? I didn't even look this up, but there should be a city in the state of Washington named George. Therefore, you could be in a city. You know, where do you live? I live in George, Washington.
I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
Hey, if anyone in the chat is in Washington State, that's a good suggestion. All right, moving into the Twilight Zone. Josh, that was great. You lived up to your name, and I think I did challenge you a little bit there.
That was some good stuff, yeah.
Additional stuff to add to your repertoire. All right, Twilight Zone. What do you got for me?
All right. Well, so first I want to just point out there's this station, this train station or whatever subway station in Boston. It's called West Station in Boston. Will open up in the year 2045 on the MBTA commuter rail.
That's in 20 years.
Yeah, it's going to cost $100 million to build this station. Harvard is going to pledge $50 million to do this. But I guess the point that some people made about this is you do realize we built the entire Empire State Building in 410 days.
Yeah.
And we can't do this station. It's going to take us 10 years.
I mean, this is the city of the Big Dig too. I lived through the Big Dig. My family is my dad's family's from Boston. And you're just like, how does this take so long? And then it leaked. It kept leaking after they opened the tunnel. Like, guys. Yeah.
The other thing I want to point out real quick is there's a study from Axios. I think we do have to be concerned about this, like with smartphones. America's 15 to 24-year-olds spend 35% less time socializing face-to-face than they did 20 years ago. And so that's one of the things I tell people in my own community, like, there's a lot of, homeschooling parents. They like to do that. And I said, that's a great option. I'm not against homeschooling. You spend a lot of time with them, but whether you're going to public school, Catholic school, whatever, I think whatever we can do to increase the amount of socialization that our kids have, put the phones down, organize events for kids to be able to go to. Here's a dance, here's a ski trip, and kids will be like, nah, because they got the phone. And so we really just have to, well, we don't want to be pushy, but you know what? Parents, we got to be a little bit more pushy. We got to push these kids to do some of this stuff, because they're just going to sit and they're going to be slaves to their darn phones, and they're going to go through life and not realize what's going on. The serendipity of life, the fun stuff that happens, spontaneous things that happen. Get off your phone, get out into the world, and start socializing. I think we'd all do better for that.
Oh my gosh, 100%. And I think too, don't be afraid to set limits. Like, the phones do not go up the stairs to the bedroom. Like, you just don't have phones, or teen phones have to be in certain rooms in the house. And it seems really, I don't know, like draconian and all that. But I think as parents, it's our job to train the kids to have that self-discipline. And if we don't have that self-discipline, it's not going to go very well. Like, if we're just doom scrolling as well. And it's so easy. The studies on the dopamine hits that kids get with being online, it's super scary. I mean, we're talking like heavy drug use level dopamine hits and addictive behaviors. So yeah, if you're a parent with questions about technology, feel free to drop them in the chat. I feel like we need to have a longer conversation about this. Josh, I just looked this up. So Boston's going to take 20 years to build one train station. Any thoughts on how long it took us to build the Transcontinental Railroad? It took us 6 years. 6 freaking years, Boston. And it was a little lower tech than the train station will be, probably. But they also didn't have like cranes and diesel engines. So I don't know. A little disappointing there, Boston, but not surprising. All right. My Twilight Zone.
Here we go.
In the spirit of renaming things, this is local news for me in Connecticut. We have a local group here which has a petition out. We're going to try and get, maybe, I guess the federal government's going to have to do this. We have a petition calling for Long Island Sound to be renamed the Gulf of Connecticut. This is real. I went online. You can actually sign the petition if you feel very strongly that because Connecticut has the most shoreline adjacent to the water, it should just be named the Gulf of Connecticut. And I don't know if it's actually going to happen, but it seems like
they should put up some signs. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, we should just put up signs. It was pretty funny, though. I think maybe there's a little spirit of Trump in the deep blue state for sure. They're like, let's get this going. All right. Hey, thanks to everyone in the chat who suffered through my microphone. Thank you, Rosie, for helping me to troubleshoot that, and for all of your hard work today. If you guys want to help us out, please make sure you're subscribed. Put a big thumbs up on this video wherever you're watching us. If you could, or listening, you leave a review. We love that. If you're on Apple, we love our Apple reviews. And of course, the best way to help us is to pray for us. Oh, and I'm supposed to say this.
And pray for the Pope. Definitely pray for the Pope.
Update on the Papa. He's still in the hospital. Definitely had some infection going on. So we're praying for Pope Francis, of course, for peace in his soul, for the guidance of his doctors on everything. Just a quick housekeeping note as well. There is no show on Wednesday this week. Josh and I are both on the road, and Pogo, of course, is snuggling a sweet baby girl. So we are going to give you Wednesday off to contemplate the true, the good, and the beautiful before we dive right back into the world of politics on Friday. But we'll be back with more special guests. And as always, please pray for us. We are praying for you. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, and Our Lady of Guadalupe, pray for us, and we will see you on Friday. Peace.